Welcome back to The Edge and our story based in Cape Couve. A newcomer in town and some complicated history has reporter Artemis Barrow stumped. Now we attend a town meeting where characters and desires clash publicly. Welcome to Cape Couve.
I'm Jason Litz. This is Cape Couve, Episode 6. Quiet as usual. Zoltan reached out to pull back the frayed curtains. Pitch black. The street lamps not fixed now for how long is it now? A year? More? He remembered that night. He was fixing tea when he saw a glimpse. Was it real? He turned back to the window, and yes, there it was. The glow of headlights, heading down High Street, switchbacking the way down the main part of town which hugged the shore. Where? He thought. Then realized it was not a lost traveler, but someone clearly making their way to Mrs. Johnson's residence hotel, the Dewdrop Inn. He walked to the front of the manor outside the Widow's Walk. There he could see the sea stretching out to meet the stars. Dark, soothing. This was his respite. But now, a visitor.
It's been a while, Zoltan thought at the time. The last few visitors he had successfully run out of town, not in person, just by making it unpleasant. Another one to chase out, he wondered? Or one to finally let stay?
Jack Jr., the builder of the mansion Zoltan was living in now, held a party when Zoltan was a young man, before he took on the moniker of Zoltan. In these days, he was James.
I intend for you to take over the mayorship, James.
James heard his father, Jack Jr., say. His father was an imposing and dictatorial man. They were descendants of the founder of Cape Couve. Jack Williamson and the Williamsons ruled it like a kingdom.
James longed to get away. He had fallen in love with a beautiful woman from a nearby town where he had attended college. Unfortunately, so had his brother Lauren. Elizabeth had to choose between them. James was always jealous of his younger brother's audacity and daring do. Lauren was a born seafarer and loved the sea life, but he was also ready to interfere in James's life and take things that James had gathered for himself, since it was so much easier than seeking those things out himself. One of those things was Elizabeth.
Elizabeth Landry was a beauty, and knew it. But she wasn't vain, she just carried it well, knowing her looks opened doors for her. But to top it off, she was also clever and engaging. As it turned out, the Landrys carried unfortunate baggage. Although they had money, there was gossip about the Landry ancestors swindling real estate investors in the area and bilking creditors to make their wealth. Elizabeth's own parents were careful not to mention this dark history and worked hard to appear above it all.
When Jack Jr. heard that both his sons were intent on courting Elizabeth, he was furious. There was no way he would tie the Williamsons with the Landrys. No matter to James, who did not care a jot about Cape Couve. He was intent on leaving the place with his beautiful bride and pursue a career in anthropology, even archaeology. Anything as far away from politics and city management as he could get. He loved history and understanding human civilization.
Father,
said James,
I'm not staying in Cape Couve. I'm not going to have anything to do with running it.
Jack Jr. responded, So you may think, James, but this is your destiny. I forbid anything else.
From then on, all he could hear was his brother's voice crying out in the wet wind, his crafted sailboat sinking. James heard it and immediately took out their skiff to try and find his brother on the roiling seas, this way, that, and finally saw his brother succumbing to the waves, holding on to the failed boat.
It was his fault, he knew, that his brother had built the boat to impress Elizabeth in time for her to return from school. And he knew Lauren had been hasty in its details to meet that deadline. because he had told Lauren of his own intent to ask for her hand in marriage when she returned. So that became Lauren's intent too. And now he was gone.
But that was then. The accident meant he was drawn back to Cape Couve, reluctantly taking over where his father, Jack Jr., had left off, and surprisingly using all those tools and insights from his study in archaeology to run this town. Today he was dealing with this new reporter, Artemis Farrow, who seemed actually competent, and he hoped possibly the answer to his prayers to fend off his nemesis, Charlie Newcomb, the developer that wanted to cancel Cape Couve, raise it, build condos, attract tourists and new landowners, ruin the seascapes, and enrich himself. That self-congratulating bore he'd hated ever since they were in high school together. There on the table lay the week's mail. He pulled out a flashy flyer. The town hall meeting was in only a few minutes to present the self-same developer, Charlie the bastard Newcomb. He knew he had to go.
Artemis thought she would be early to the meeting, but as usual, LaDonna and Carol were already there setting up chairs. They ran the local diner and coffee shop, the Rainbow Bistro, and she had liked them since she met them on her arrival at Cape Couve. She helped with the chairs.
"How's the diner?"
she asked, and immediately bit her tongue.
Bistro.
LaDonna and Carol chimed in on cue.
"Yep."
Artemis reminded herself. They were sensitive about the name of the Rainbow Bistro.
Others started to file in. Ruthie DeFrey from the sweet shop, Pastor Dan and his wife Millicent, Officer Mike, Esme and Asher, who ran the cannabis shop among them. Artemis was there as the owner and editor and only reporter of the new newspaper, the Cape Couve Chronicle. She had been in town about a year now and was on first-name basis with nearly everyone there.
The event drawing everyone here was the man up front, sashaying his impressive girth by the podium, talking rapidly with the city manager, Mark Zimmer. As Mark pointed out the shop owners and citizens of Cape Couve, she hadn't met the man yet, though not without trying. He was a developer. She knew, and he had big plans for big changes here. Plans she wasn't sure everyone would be glad to see.
He was also apparently known in these parts. His family had lived in Cape Couve in the past, but left some years ago and not under the best circumstances. That's where her leads had come to a blank. The plans would need town approval, the town council decided, and so this meeting was called. Mark Zimmer called the meeting to order.
Okay, everyone, take your seats. This meeting is to discuss zoning issues in Cape Couve, some development projects, and how they affect all of us. As you all know, it's been a while since someone has come forward with development issues for our town, and it's interesting to us for the money it might bring to the city, which can fund infrastructure, our schools, and other civic projects and responsibilities. This developer is no stranger to Cape Couve, and I know some of you remember him, his wife and their kids coming up here. It's an honor to welcome you back, Mr. Newcomb. Let's give a Cape Couve welcome to Charlie Newcomb.
From a side door, Zoltan peered into the room. Nearly everyone was there, all the people he had allowed to stay in Cape Couve, all the residents who, with his behind-the-scenes guidance and support, had kept the charming small-town feel at Cape Couve. All the people who never minded the regular removal of the directional signs that led from the freeway to this haven.
He quietly slipped in, staying in the back behind one of the posts in the room, hat pulled low. He watched as Charlie stood up, waving his bejeweled hand at the crowd. All that bling made Zoltan hate him even more. He saw him glad hand the front row, the trickles of sweat sliding from his pink forehead. Could a bluegrass band and some corn dogs make this mawkish scene any more of a cliche, he thought. Charlie made his way back up to the microphone.
Ah, hello, Cape Couve!
He started when there was a pounding at the door. Everyone looked up and turned to the door as it flung open. It was Lula Love, the performance artist who had been working to reclaim the old Trinity Theater, which she had renamed Starlight.
"I hear you're thinking about buying up this town, tearing down everything, including my theater."
Your theater?
Charlie gulped.
Just ruin everything in your path like you always do.
Zoltan couldn't believe his good luck. She was doing his work, this flashy dancer, this... Wait a second, he thought, and looked again. And it couldn't be. She isn't.
Abigail!
Charlie spit out,
Stop right there.
said Lula.
There's no Abigail. Not anymore. The name's Lula.
The crowd looked back and forth between Lula and Charlie.
And you're not going to do any of that. You're going to leave, and there's nothing you can do about it. Now get off that stage, Daddy.
Charlie stepped back from the microphone.
Abigail, Lula, I thought you were gone, maybe even dead.
I think that's what you wished, isn't it?
Said Lula.
After you practically ran me out of town, after you nearly beat my mother to death, not with your fists, but with your voice. You ripped the soul right out of her. That's what killed her. Your cruelty.
So it was Abigail Newcomb, that garrulous girl his son used to date. Zoltan had always liked her spunk, her willingness to confront, though he was a little worried how her flippant behavior influenced his son. Now, she's come back, transformed.
Lula advanced on Charlie.
I can go on, Charlie, if you'd like.
She walked a few steps closer.
Would you like them to know more?
The crowd was unable to look away.
That's why I came back, to keep you from ruining anything else. I'm not letting you win again.
Zoltan wanted to keep watching her too, but instead, he took his cue to slip out the side door again.
Artemis took notes. This was the kind of story that sells papers, a little voice in her head whispered. But the sound of the door drew her attention. She got up and made her way to the side door, only to watch as a black Jeep pulled out of the lot and drove away.
This town is getting more interesting, Artemis thought. She turned to see the meeting breaking up, people leaving.
She made her way back in to grab her jacket when she overheard Charlie talking to Mark. She stood behind the door listening to Charlie.
I know it could mean a lot for Cape Couve. You could use a better tax base, fix those potholes and signs, upgrade your police and fire departments, get rid of some of those eyesore buildings.
Mark stopped him.
Charlie, if you want to purchase this much property, the town has to agree. And after tonight...
Charlie stopped him.
I can make it very worth your while, Mark. Mr. City Manager, very.
And he plunked down a thick envelope on the podium.
I don't want your...
Mark protested.
I'll call you tomorrow, Mark.
He said as he turned and walked out.
Think about it.
Artemis drew back as Charlie left. Then she saw Mark reach for the envelope. But instead of taking it, he took the pen that was next to it, pocketed the pen, put on his jacket, and left the building. Artemis watched him leave. Then she walked to the podium herself and took a look inside the envelope.
Whoo boy, Bounder.
She said to her dog.
It just gets thicker.
And that's the scoop from Cape Couve, where time isn't even a concept. It's the Cape Couve way.
Thanks for listening. I'm Rebecca Hoffman, storytelling coach here at the Magenta and author of these stories. I'd like to thank our Magenta performers, Maddie Dory, Laura Henderson, Jason Litz, Carol Radkins, and Dave Roberts for lending their voices and talent to these stories. We've enjoyed presenting this serial story about Cape Couve, first featured on local radio station KXRW and X-Ray FM. We hope this has inspired you to support storytelling and the many creative projects and plays here at the Magenta Theatre as we celebrate Give More